This training overview presents an all-hazard emergency response plan for Chick-fil-A. And it uses the standard response protocol framework. It integrates emergency preparedness from this module and then also aligns with violence prevention and environmental safety best practices. The safety topic for this training is the development and implementation of an all-hazards emergency response plan using the standard response protocol. The framework allows for action-based guidance when you respond to threats, weather emergencies, or man-made disasters. The audience is, of course, Chick-fil-A team members, which are the frontline members, the crew leaders, the shift leaders, the team leaders, the director, the operations director, and executive directors, and then the store operator. It includes all Chick-fil-A employees and stakeholders. And the workforce includes teenagers, young adults working in a fast-paced, public-facing roles. So it includes them as well as operational leaders who are responsible for oversight. This training is necessary because, of course, of the high public visibility of people that work at Chick-fil-A, because of cash handling exposure, because of outdoor operations, because of our young workforce, and then because of, obviously, legal safety obligations. The audience requires this training because the risk run involves daily exposure to cash handling, public interactions, outdoor traffic lanes, and weather risks. Since many of the team members are young and probably haven't had any type of emergency training, it's important for them to understand what to do. Additionally, OSHA requires employers to maintain EAPs. Safety preparedness is it's a leadership obligation as well as a legal responsibility. All hazards framework overview. The categories are criminal threats, weather emergencies, and man-made disasters, and the principle is one response structure for multiple hazards. The training uses an all-hazard model, so rather than building separate plans for each possible emergency, establish a standard procedure, a predictable action framework that applies across the three major categories: threats involving people, environmental hazards, and man-made disasters. The standard response protocol is simple. It's action-based, and it's based off of hold, secure, lock down, evacuate, and shelter. The SRP is action rather than scenario-based. It's consistent with each crisis and consistent with crisis research. And it shows that there are clear directives. You don't have to be trying to think under stress. The 5 SRP actions provide simple and direct guidance. And this aligns with emergency planning principles, such as using standardized response vocabulary as well as drills. So, for criminal threats, examples include armed robbery, suspicious individuals, police activity nearby, active assailants. The SRP you would apply: secure, lock down, or evacuate. For threats involving a person, this is where SRP is most directly applicable. You use secure when the risk is external. Use lockdown when it's immediate, and then use evacuate only when there's a safe exit nearby. The procedures reflect the active response to a threat and is described in most emergency preparedness literature. Weather emergencies. Examples: tornadoes, severe thunderstorms, hurricanes, The application, shelter, secure, hold, and evacuate. In weather scenarios, shelter becomes a primary response action. Secure, of course, can be used to bring staff inside. Chick-fil-A, we had a tornado warning a couple of weeks ago, and secure was the first thing that the leaders did when a gust of wind blew through and blew out the lights and tore up transformers and sent stuff flying everywhere. First thing the leaders did was secure, bring all the staff inside. Hold may apply during short-term storm activity, which is what we're initially doing. We're holding in our position, still doing the same thing, but just being aware. But then that quickly turned left. And I believe that when they enter there, anytime the tornado warning, severe thunderstorm warning, lightning warning, any of that, the first thing should be to secure. Wait until it gets worse. Anyway, the structure keeps the language consistent across hazard types. And then, so again, for weather emergencies, shelter becomes the primary response. Shelter, shelter, shelter. It should be the first action, but most people don't really think of shelter. They just think of, oh, let's get out of the rain. But the idea is to think upstream. So we're not going to wait until windows start bursting. You know, we see the actual, we see stuff flying out the window. No, we're going to prepare ahead of time. That's the one thing I didn't see. Everybody was secured inside the building, but I didn't see an upstream thinking to prevent us from getting caught in the storm in the first place. Prevent us from getting caught in the storm in the first place. So in man-made incidents, evacuate is, again, the primary action, especially if there's a gas leak or an uncontrolled fire. Now, and the difference is, in a weather-based emergency, the primary response is shelter. And in threat-based response, the primary is either lockdown or evacuate. Man-made disasters, most likely you're going to use evacuate. Secure may be used for external events, but for internal equipment failures, things that don't really threaten life, hold may apply. And then the good thing about standard response protocol is that it fits perfectly with what OSHA already requires for most restaurants and businesses, which is the EAP plan. So when should the training occur? Upon hire, you should receive this training. Should understand what the store knows and will happen in an emergency. Annual refreshers, quarterly tabletop drills, annual evacuation drills, and then post-incident reviews. The training has to be implemented upon hire and reinforced annually. And then, of course, tabletop exercises would occur quarterly just to practice scenarios, just to drill. And then annual evacuation drills also will be necessary as long as they meet fire code expectations and regulations. So as far as legal requirements go, OSHA already requires businesses to have an EAP. They're also required to have a fire evacuation procedure, hazard communication plan, and some type of accountability process for employees. Especially large restaurant chains like Chick-fil-A, they are required to have some type of corporate crisis and loss prevention protocol. That would probably come from Chick-fil-A headquarters and corporate. So usually there are some standard things that are already in place, but not specializing, customized plans for things that are, things that observe along the way. So what we've been kind of really getting at, hitting at, and focused on this course is prevention. We don't want to wait till something happens and try to respond. We don't want to have the best response times and best response plans in the world. We want to prevent things from happening. We want to have the best prevention plan. So if you integrate SRP into the broader idea of prevention, it fits in with both prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery. Of course, recovery, by having a plan and being able knowing what to do afterwards. Response, if something happens, this is what we do. This is what's going to happen. Preparedness, having a plan to begin with, to even lead the team and being able to access it quickly without thinking. But then prevention. How do you prevent a robbery? How do you prevent a man-made disaster? How do you prevent a weather-related incident? In this case, you can't really prevent, but you can reduce the likelihood of how hard you would have to recover, how well the response is, and how well you're prepared. So some things you cannot prevent. You don't know if somebody's going to come in and rob the place, but you cannot allow your team members and the customers to be sitting ducks. You can easily put a plan in place to identify people who are threats and a plan in place to keep the customers and employees safe when there is a threat or even the risk of a threat. Prevention includes situational awareness and reporting. Even though we can't prevent somebody from robbing a store, again, if we're aware of our surroundings, aware of people and customers that could cause an issue, and then properly reporting and handling those, we use what's called the herd model for de-escalating any situation. So you hear, you empathize, you apologize, you resolve the issue, and then you delight. And that's kind of the de-escalation method. You use it many times when customers are just so upset for no reason. No reason, they're just so upset. I've even had a lady threaten to stay in line, not get out of the drive-thru line. She was going to stay in and get out of her car if I didn't do what she said, on and on and on. And so I had to use the herd model. Okay, I hear you, I empathize, I apologize. We didn't get your order the way you wanted to. You pull around there, take care of it. Sorry, please return again. And she did. I saw her multiple times after that. But if I wasn't aware of my surroundings and if I wasn't prepared to know how to deal with someone who is clearly upset, my response would have not been the right way and I wouldn't have been able to recover, and neither would the customer. All right, so delivery approach. Well, delivery methods would be slide presentation like the one now. Store specific floor map visuals. We do have a bunch of those. Just showing exits and where you can find certain things that we have a bunch of those already in our store. Scenario walkthroughs, of course, what happens, where do you go, if this happens, if that happens. A quick reference handout, which would be at the end of the slideshow, and then tabletop exercises, just discussing various scenarios and what could happen and what might happen. So the training will be delivered through 30-minute sessions, and they will use the maps, the store maps, and then you can just walk through threats, weather, man-made scenarios, and provide a handout to show what we do in these situations. So in a crisis, clarity beats panic. This training doesn't attempt to predict every crisis, but it attempts to prepare employees with action instead of predict. Performance under stress defaults to prior training, research, and emergency management shows us that. So our goal is to ensure that there's a structured response already in place so that when something happens, we already know what